You think you are perfectly protected. You spent $300 of your hard-earned cash. You spent 4 frustrating hours on a Sunday afternoon running cheap wires under your expensive fairings. You spliced blindly into your tail light harness, and you tucked that little black plastic recording box deep under your seat. You tell yourself that if some distracted teenager in a leased Nissan Altima crosses the double yellow line while texting and takes you out, you have the ultimate trump card. You have the irrefutable video proof. Then the absolute worst actually happens. You are sitting on the shoulder of the highway with a bent front fork, a leaking radiator, and a bruised collarbone. The police finally show up. You confidently reach under your seat, pull the micro SD card out of your motorcycle dash cam, plug it into your phone adapter, and open the media folder. It is completely empty. Or the last recorded file is from 3 weeks ago when you were idling in your driveway. Or maybe the file is actually there, but when you hit play, it is a corrupted, unplayable mess of green and gray pixels. I have been wrenching on motorcycles for over 2 decades. I have grease permanently embedded under my fingernails from fixing the electrical nightmares that riders inflict upon their own machines. Dozens of times a year, a rider brings a bike into my shop complaining about a mysterious parasitic battery drain, or a completely melted wiring harness, or a piece of junk plastic physically fused to their aluminum subframe. Every single time, the culprit is a cheap, overhyped motorcycle dash cam. Let me tell you an industry secret that the manufacturers are desperate to keep hidden. The motorcycle dash cam industry is one of the dirtiest, most deceptive consumer electronics markets on the planet right now. These companies are taking standard, fragile, heat-sensitive car dash cam technology, ripping it out of the car chassis, stuffing it inside cheap ABS plastic housings, falsely claiming it is waterproof, and charging you triple the original price. They are gambling with your legal safety, knowing full well their products cannot survive the brutal vibrations, extreme heat, and severe weather conditions of a real motorcycle environment. Today, I am ripping the lid off this massive scam. I am going to walk you through the 5 absolute worst motorcycle dash cams on the market. These are the specific brands you need to physically rip off your bike immediately before they fail you when you need them most. I am going to expose their exact prices, their catastrophic real-world failures, and how they trick you into buying them. And I am saving the biggest, most expensive betrayal in the industry for last. But do not worry, I will not leave you hanging in despair. After we clear out the garbage, I am going to show you the 2 specific brands that mechanics actually trust. The ones that are engineered like military aviation equipment and will actually save your skin in a courtroom. Let us start right at the bottom of the barrel. Number 5 on the list of absolute garbage you need to stop buying is the unbranded Amazon special. You know exactly the ones I am talking about. They go by randomly generated names like OneVon, Blue Sky C, or whatever scrambled alphabet soup a dropshipper decided to slap on Amazon this particular week. They cost anywhere from $40 to $80. The box aggressively screams 4K Ultra HD dual camera in massive font. Let me explain exactly what you are actually buying for $80. You are buying a mathematical lie. These cameras do not shoot in real 4K. They are using an obsolete, incredibly cheap 1 megapixel image sensor salvaged from a 2010 era webcam factory. The processor inside the camera literally takes a grainy, pixelated 720p image and artificially stretches it to 4K dimensions. This scam is called frame interpolation. When you are standing completely still in a well-lit parking lot, the image might look somewhat passable on a tiny phone screen. But motorcycles vibrate. Motorcycles move extremely fast. When you are doing 60 miles an hour down a highway, the harsh, high-frequency vibration of your handlebars combined with the pathetically low bitrate of these cheap cameras turns the recorded footage into a smeared, unrecognizable oil painting. Try pausing the video to read the license plate of the guy who just maliciously brake-checked you. You absolutely cannot. It is just a glowing blur of pixels. But the pathetic image quality is not even the most dangerous part. These unbranded cameras use cheap, unsealed push-pin electrical connectors. They proudly claim an IP65 water resistance rating, but I have pulled these exact units apart after a rider went through a light afternoon drizzle and found the internal green circuit boards entirely covered in white corrosion and shorted out. Furthermore, they use a primitive, outdated file finalization protocol. They record video in strict 3-minute chunks. If the unit loses power for even a fraction of a second before the chunk is finalized and written to the card, the entire 3-minute file is instantly corrupted and lost forever. So when a car violently hits you and the impact momentarily jiggles the cheap power wire connected to your battery terminal, the camera loses power instantly. The exact file showing the life-threatening crash never actually saves. You bought a camera for the sole purpose of recording a crash, and its own cheap, thin wiring prevents it from doing exactly that. Moving on to number 4, the SYKIK Rider. This one is a step up in price, usually sitting around $130 to $150. It targets riders who want a dedicated system. SYKIK gives you a main DVR control unit with a little built-in LCD screen, which seems like a genuinely nice feature in theory. You tuck that main DVR box under your passenger seat, wire up the front and rear cameras, and forget about it. And that right there is the fatal engineering flaw that destroys the system. Think deeply about the environmental reality under a motorcycle seat. You have absolutely zero cooling airflow. You are sitting right above the scorching engine case or the radiating exhaust pipes. You are often right next to the motorcycle's regulator rectifier, which gets blistering hot on a summer day. Now, take a cheap ABS plastic box containing a constantly running, heat-generating LCD screen and a bottom-tier processor that generates its own significant thermal load, and stick it perfectly in that sealed oven. I have literally had to take a heat gun and a putty knife to peel violently melted SYKIK DVR units off the inner plastic fairings of sport bikes. They literally cook themselves to death. When the internal processor begins to overheat, it does not safely shut down gracefully. It starts frantically dropping frames, creating choppy video, then it randomly reboots, and eventually, the severe thermal stress causes the microscopic solder joints on the circuit board to crack and separate. The rider has absolutely no idea this is happening because the unit is completely hidden under the seat. You ride around for 6 entire months confidently assuming you are being recorded, but the unit permanently died back in July. Including an active LCD screen on a hidden DVR unit is a foolish marketing gimmick designed to sell units to people who do not understand basic motorcycle thermal dynamics. It is a completely useless feature that actively destroys the device from the inside out. Number 3 on our list, the helmet-mounted hybrids, specifically the Sena 10C Pro and the EVO series. Now, you might immediately say, wait a minute, Sena makes phenomenal helmet intercoms. Yes, they absolutely do. But their dashcam hybrids, which will aggressively drain your wallet of an eye-watering $350, are a mechanical and practical trap. The initial appeal is incredibly obvious. You have one single device attached to your helmet, which means absolutely no terrifying wiring jobs on the bike itself. You simply hit record, and the camera captures exactly what your head is looking at. But the execution of this concept is a complete disaster for one very specific, fundamental reason. Lithium polymer batteries. A true, reliable motorcycle dashcam needs to turn on automatically when you turn the ignition key, record continuously without any user input, and turn off when you park. It needs to be a completely fire-and-forget safety system. The Sena 10C runs entirely on a tiny internal battery pack. If you are recording video in high definition while actively using the Bluetooth intercom features, that battery will be completely dead in roughly 1 hour. Maybe an hour and 20 minutes if you are extremely lucky and the temperature is perfect. If you go on a standard Sunday morning canyon ride with your buddies, the camera is dead before you even reach the good curvy roads. To make matters exponentially worse, lithium polymer batteries degrade rapidly when exposed to the harsh extremes of weather. If you ride in freezing winter temperatures, the internal battery voltage sags dramatically, and the camera abruptly shuts off after 20 minutes. If you ride in the blazing summer sun, the dark black casing of the unit intensely absorbs the heat, the internal operating temperature skyrockets, and the protective thermal circuit kills the recording to prevent a literal fire. And exactly like the cheap Amazon cameras, if a severe high-G impact from a crash knocks the battery connection loose for a millisecond, the current video file violently corrupts because it did not properly finalize the MP4 container. You are paying $350 for a camera that only works for incredibly short commutes under absolutely perfect weather conditions and demands your constant paranoid babysitting. That is not a safety device. That is a chore. Let us finally step into the so-called premium tier. Number 2 on our hit list of overpriced garbage is the Kenwood STZ RF200.WD. This unit costs an absurd $400. Kenwood is a legendary, historically respected name in the car audio world. You see that familiar name on the box, you instantly assume quality. You assume rigorous Japanese engineering and quality control. Let me expose exactly how the global electronics industry actually operates behind closed doors. Massive legacy brands often do not design their own specialized, low-volume niche products anymore. They fly executives to a massive manufacturing plant in Shenzhen, China. Look at a massive catalog of existing generic dash cams, pick one that looks decent, request a slight change to the plastic molding, proudly slap the Kenwood logo on the front, and violently mark the price up by 400%. For $400, the Kenwood system gives you an incredibly outdated 1080p resolution on a cheap image sensor that was considered obsolete 8 years ago. The dynamic range is so pathetically poor that if you are riding directly toward the setting sun, the street ahead of you becomes a pitch-black, unreadable shadow. At night, the harsh glare from oncoming headlights completely blows out the image sensor, making passing license plates look like glowing, featureless white rectangles. But the real, unforgivable crime is the software interface. You are brutally forced to use their proprietary smartphone app to download your own footage. The app functions like it was aggressively coded by an unpaid intern in 2014. It constantly drops the Wi-Fi connection, freezes midway through downloading a standard 500 megabyte video file, and frequently requires you to completely turn off your phone's cellular data just to maintain a fragile, agonizingly slow connection to the camera. The mounting brackets are made of thin stamped metal that literally bends under the wind pressure at highway speeds, causing the camera to vibrate violently. It is entirely unacceptable to confidently charge $400 for ancient legacy hardware and abandoned, utterly broken software. You are effectively paying a $300 tax just for the privilege of having a Kenwood sticker on your bike. And now, the grand finale of failure. Number 1. The single worst offender in the entire motorcycle dashcam industry. The Thinkware M1. This specific unit retails for an astonishing $500. $500 for a motorcycle dashcam. At that extreme premium price point, the device should be absolutely flawless. It should be bulletproof. Instead, the Thinkware M1 is the single most infuriating piece of electronics I have ever had the profound misfortune of ripping out of a customer's motorcycle. Thinkware built a massive, well-deserved reputation on manufacturing high-end car dash cams. But when they aggressively moved into the motorcycle market, they completely ignored the harsh electrical realities of a motorcycle's delicate charging system. The M1 is notoriously famous among mechanics for massive parasitic battery drain. Even when the motorcycle is completely turned off and the key is removed, the M1's so-called smart power module frequently fails to properly go to sleep. It just sits there silently in the dark, slowly bleeding your motorcycle's expensive battery completely dry. I cannot begin to tell you how many furious riders have brought their bikes to me, utterly convinced they had a blown stator or a critically faulty voltage rectifier, only for me to spend 2 hours tracing the severe voltage draw right back to the Thinkware M1 module. Furthermore, the M1 profoundly suffers from the exact same overheating issues as the drastically cheaper brands. Thinkware arrogantly decided to make the main DVR unit out of a premium-feeling, heavy plastic, but they completely failed to design adequate thermal dissipation channels. Jammed under a tight sport bike seat, the unit enters an endless, maddening cycle of violently overheating, shutting down to protect itself, cooling off slightly, and turning back on. Every single time it does this, you hear an incredibly annoying automated voice prompt echoing in your helmet if you have the app connected. And speaking of the app, the Thinkware mobile application is a legendary, universally hated disaster on every motorcycle forum on the internet. Half the time, the app aggressively demands precise location tracking permissions just to let you connect to the camera's local Wi-Fi. The other half of the time, the camera just flat out refuses to broadcast its network. You have a $500 premium system that actively kills your motorcycle battery, constantly overheats under your seat, and maliciously locks your own footage behind a completely broken application interface. It is the ultimate betrayal of consumer trust. So, if absolutely all of this is complete garbage, why do these massive companies keep selling it? Because they know you are genuinely desperate for legal protection. And until right now, nobody has publicly held them accountable for treating violent, vibrating motorcycles exactly like smooth, air-conditioned four-wheeled cars. A motorcycle dash cam absolutely cannot use cheap lithium batteries because they swell and violently explode in the intense heat. It cannot use standard plastic enclosures because they literally vibrate apart at the seams. It requires a completely different, zero-compromise engineering philosophy. Which finally brings us to the cure. The two specific brands that actually did the hard work. The ones that cynical engineers and bitter mechanics actually respect and put on their own personal motorcycles. First is the Viofo MT1. This is the honest, brutally reliable working-class hero of motorcycle dash cams. It will run you about $300, which is certainly not cheap, but every single penny goes strictly into actual military-grade hardware instead of flashy marketing hype. Viofo completely threw out the dangerous lithium-ion battery. Instead, the MT1 is powered by high-grade industrial supercapacitors. This is a massively important detail. A supercapacitor does not store dangerous chemical energy, it strictly stores electrical energy. It can operate perfectly in extreme freezing winter temperatures, and it can survive sitting in the baking summer sun in the middle of a desert without swelling, venting, or exploding. It provides just enough instantaneous, reliable power to flawlessly finalize and lock your video file the exact millisecond the main power is violently cut in a crash. You will never, ever lose a crash file to corruption on a supercapacitor system. They also use genuine, high-end Sony Starvis IMX221 image sensors for both the front and rear cameras. Starvis literally stands for Starlight Visibility. It is a heavy-duty industrial-grade sensor originally designed for outdoor security cameras to clearly see in near-total darkness. While the unbranded garbage cameras give you a pitch-black screen at night, the Viofo sensor magically pulls light out of nowhere. You can clearly read the specific state on the license plate of a car tailgating you on a completely unlit rural country road. The wiring cables are remarkably thick, heavily shielded against the intense electromagnetic interference generated by your spark plugs, and they use true waterproof aviation connectors with heavy metal screw-on collars. They even include a rugged, waterproof remote button you mount to your handlebars. Hit it once, and it instantly locks the current video file into a protected folder that cannot be overwritten. It is built like a Russian tank. It does exactly what it promises, and it hides away reliably for years. But if you want the absolute, undisputed pinnacle of the industry, if you want the system that makes absolutely everything else look like a fragile children's toy, you aggressively track down and buy the Innova K3 or K5. Let us focus on the K5. It is going to cost you roughly $450, but this is the only camera on the entire global market that actually justifies a premium price tag. Innov did not simply repurpose cheap car parts. They built this entire system entirely from the ground up, strictly for motorcycles. The camera housings and the main DVR unit are not made of cheap, injection-molded ABS plastic. They are entirely CNC machined out of solid blocks of aerospace-grade aluminum. Aluminum acts as a massive, highly efficient heat sink. The entire metal body of the camera actively dissipates the heat generated by the powerful processor into the passing wind, meaning it literally cannot overheat, no matter how hot the engine below it gets. Inside the K5, the entire internal circuit board is totally potted. That means the factory fills the entire inside of the aluminum casing with a specialized, rock-hard epoxy resin. The delicate circuit board is permanently entombed in stone. It is functionally immune to water. You could literally submerge the entire recording unit in a bucket of water for an entire week, and it would flawlessly keep recording. It is entirely immune to high-frequency vibration because there are simply no exposed solder joints left to shake loose. You could mount this directly to the frame of a violently vibrating, straight-piped V-twin cruiser, and the hardware would not even flinch. The K5 records in true, incredibly crisp native 4K resolution at 30 frames per second using a massive 8 megapixel Sony image sensor. It is not digitally stretched, it is not cheaply interpolated, it is razor sharp. You can pause the high-speed footage and easily read a small bumper sticker on a car 2 lanes over in heavy traffic. They use dual-band 5 GHz Wi-Fi, meaning pulling those massive 4K files to your phone takes seconds instead of agonizing minutes. But the absolute masterpiece of the Innov system is their profoundly brilliant smart power supply. It emphatically does not rely on you blindly tapping a cheap Positap connector into a fragile taillight wire. The heavy-duty power module connects safely and directly to your main battery terminals, but it features a highly sensitive built-in voltage sensor. It specifically detects the exact microvoltage ripple that naturally occurs when your motorcycle's stator and alternator start spinning. That is precisely how it knows to turn itself on. When the engine stops and the voltage smooths out, the smart power module intentionally triggers a 10-second delayed shutdown, perfectly and safely saving your final file. No totally dead batteries, no silent parasitic drain, no forgotten recordings. It also features a lightning-fast 5 Hz GPS module, meaning it updates your precise speed and exact geographical location 5 times every single second, permanently embedding that raw, undeniable data directly into the video file. If you ever have to go to court and an aggressive defense lawyer tries to claim you were speeding, you have indisputable military-grade telemetry explicitly proving exactly how fast you were going at the exact millisecond of impact. Listen to me very carefully. You are willingly riding a metal frame strapped to a highly explosive engine, surrounded by 2-ton cages of steel driven by exhausted people staring blankly at their smartphones. The streets are an absolute war zone. When the catastrophic worst finally happens, the police will blame the motorcycle rider by default. The only person who is actually going to tell your true side of the story is that tiny glass lens mounted on your bike. Stop buying cheap plastic junk that will inevitably betray you the exact moment you get hit. Stop funding massive corporations that repackage 10-year-old technology and arrogantly demand $500. Do the job once. Do the job right. Hardwire a reliable supercapacitor or a fully potted aluminum system to your motorcycle. And ride knowing with absolute certainty that if someone aggressively tries to ruin your life, you tightly hold the definitive, unshakable proof. Stay safe out there. Keep the rubber side down and stop letting these companies